If you thought the God Usopp moment was funny, wait till you see what happens to him in this week's episode when Doflamingo decides to put a hit out on his strongest opponents in the birdcage of death. Before I begin my review, I just want to give a shameless plug-in to a review that I've been doing for a brand new anime series called Death Parade. I think it's one of the greatest anime series I've seen in quite some time, and I've been trying to get my viewers to check it out. So please, check out this review. It's really freaking awesome. This is your chance to check it out. And there we go. Also guys, stay tuned at the very end of the video. I'm going to do a quick fire review of The Rolling Girls episode 5. In this week's episode, the massacre of Dressrosa continues. Everyone continues to kill each other due to Doflamingo controlling them like puppets. But the most interesting part of this episode is that he decides to set up this competition where he tells the pirates and citizens of Dressrosa that if they go after these people, they will be spared and they will also be paid a very handsome reward. And he divides all of these people up into different stars. You have 1 stars, you have 2 stars, you have 3 stars, and you have the very big surprise 5-star that everybody's going to be hunting down. So let's just sort of go through the entire roster. In the 1-star group, you have Kinemon, Violet, Rebecca, Nico Robin, and Frankie. I'm kind of disappointed that Frankie is in the 1-star group due to all of the destruction that he's caused and what he's going to do later on in this arc, especially when he gets all pumped up fighting against the citizens of Dressrosa and getting ready to destroy the factory, all in the honor of Usopp. That brings us to the 2-star opponents, which are going to be Kiros and Zoro. I just love the fact that they're both on the same level. They're probably not on the same level in terms of, like, strength. Obviously, I think Zoro is a more powerful warrior than Kiros is, but I still gotta give props to Kiros. The guy is still awesome this week, just running around, killing everybody with 1 leg, no powers, no hockey. Guy's a freaking badass. And that, of course, brings us to the 1-stars. And, of course, there's a lot of obvious ones here, like Luffy, Trafalgar Law, and, of course, King Riku. Not to mention, we cannot forget Fire Fist Sabo, who actually seems pretty shocked that he was actually announced by Doflamingo. And then that leads us to what I think is the best part about this week's episode, when Doflamingo announces a surprise 5-star opponent for everybody to hunt down and capture, and that is Usopp. Because Usopp has really pissed off Doflamingo, and immediately, all of the pirates who were just worshipping him like a god are getting ready to stick his head on a freaking pike, all for the sake of money. It's disgusting, and it's hilarious. Mostly just to see Usopp's reaction to all of this. It's definitely one of the funniest moments I've ever seen from the entire series, and it is one of the few times I can definitely remember, while watching the episode, actually rearing back and laughing just at Usopp's reaction at that. I remember reading this in the manga, but I completely forgot about this moment right at this part, and the minute Doflamingo mentioned that, I was like, oh shit, he's about to mention Usopp, and just his facial reaction was just perfect. So, now that everybody's wanted, everybody is just running away from everyone, and it's just ridiculous. It's just a freaking madhouse in Dressrosa right now. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? Pretty decent episode, pretty average. The first half of the episode, and by the first half I mean like the first 10 minutes, was really slow. It was basically just a retread of all of the events that we've seen going on inside of Dressrosa as it was covered with the birdcage, people being controlled by strings, killing their family, shooting in random directions, and it's all just kind of meh. I've seen it all before, but finally when we get to Doflamingo announcing all of the people in the competition, it starts to get kind of exciting. It's a little slow how they go through the entire, like, roster of everybody they're going through, but it's all worth it for that Usopp moment, just for his reaction. It's awesome. After that, it's just the characters running away from everybody who's trying to hunt them down. There are a few funny moments in this episode, most of which I think come from Bartolomeo. I'm pretty convinced at this point he's going to be the next Straw Hat Pirate, and I honestly wouldn't mind that. I think he's really funny. The one thing I'm most excited about right now that we're finally getting to, like, the big battle moments of Dressrosa, is really getting to see what Luffy and Fujitora are going to do. Those are the real 2 characters that I'm looking out for the most. Obviously, it's probably going to end with Luffy versus Doflamingo. I mean, it usually ends that way, the big villain fighting against the main character of the series. Although, after watching this week's episode, I still want to see Fujitora and Doflamingo fight. you can tell that even though he's not even saying anything, Doflamingo is really pissing him off, and he wants to get bloody revenge against him. But still, I'm sure Fujitora is also going to have his hands tied up in this arc as well. But I just still think that confrontation would be really awesome to see. Otherwise, this episode was just sort of okay. It was a very slow episode, just sort of a setup showing everybody that is going to be wanted by Doflamingo, which it took a long time to get there. Considering last week's episode ended with that moment, and it took him 10 minutes to get to that again, I don't know, that's really just biding for time. But despite that, that Usopp moment was funny. There was a little bit of Frankie action, tons of funny moments from Bartolomeo, which is always great, and all of the characters are finally getting ready to set up the big battles of Dressrosa. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 3 out of 5. Just an average episode of One Piece, but it was still pretty fun and had some funny moments, and you should definitely check it out if you've been following the anime version or if you're a fan of the One Piece manga series. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of One Piece. What did you think about Usopp actually being the most wanted person from Doflamingo? That's pretty damn funny. And what do you want to see from the rest of the Dressrosa arc? If you guys would like to subscribe to our channel, you can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. And you can also follow us on social media like Facebook and on Twitter. Now stay tuned for my quick review of The Rolling Girls Episode 5. In this week's episode of The Rolling Girls, our main heroines find themselves in a town which is populated by biker gangs who are in the middle of a civil war, and one of them happens to be led by this badass bartender who is very dandy. So dandy, in fact, that he can actually block a motorcycle with his fist. The only thing I didn't really care for about this week's episode is that it actually takes the main characters of the Rolling Girls and actually puts them aside to introduce a lot of new ones, such as this new character by the name of Himeko, who also happens to have her very own Moonlight Stone, and also seems to have the ability to carve them as well. This actually has to do with her lineage, which comes from her father, who happens to be an expert builder of Shachihokos, which happen to be these weird, almost lion-looking fish things that you always see at the top of pagodas, which actually ask for rain to come and wash away demons or fire. It's a pretty useful and interesting things, but she doesn't seem to want to get into the family business, and that's where the conflict comes in this episode. Not to mention, she happens to be friends with a rival gang member, so who knows where this arc is going. Hopefully it'll lead to some really flashy action. What I will say is this week's episode was beautifully animated. Everything's just really cute and bubbly and very eye-catching. The only thing is, I just don't really care about any of the main characters, and I really do think that's a problem with the series, considering in this week's episode, they didn't really do anything. They did have some funny moments, like at the beginning where they ran out of gas, and then suddenly one of those big tigerfish things almost smashed them to death, but really that's the only notable thing they did this week. Really, it was just the introduction of this brand new town and the characters that reside within it and the problems that they're having, and I'm sure it's all going to lead to some pretty exciting action and probably some racing on motorcycles. So I'm still excited to see what's going to happen. I just wish I cared a little bit more about what's happening. Otherwise, this was still a pretty good episode of The Rolling Girls. Check it out, guys. Pretty cool stuff.